I'll never forget that day. Unlike the quiet, predictable routine I had grown used to, everything changed in an instant. That morning began like any other. I woke up, made myself a cup of coffee, and stood by the window, watching the world outside slowly come to life. At 59, I told myself I was still young at heart. I worked out, took care of myself, and every time I looked in the mirror, I tried to see someone vibrant, someone still worthy of being noticed. But beneath all of that effort, there was an emptiness I could never quite fill. Days passed in silence. Evenings stretched longer than they should, and the walls of my home sometimes felt like they were closing in on me. I had spent years being strong, being independent, being everything the world expected, but no one ever tells you how heavy loneliness can become when it quietly settles into your life. Then there was Anthony, the delivery boy. Just 23, full of energy and life. Every time he rang my doorbell, something stirred inside me. A warmth, a pull I couldn't explain. It wasn't just about him being young. It was the way he smiled, the way he spoke with kindness, the way he made even a brief moment feel meaningful. For months, I found excuses to order things I didn't need, just to see him for a few fleeting seconds. A book I'd never read, decorations I didn't require, kitchen items I already had, anything just to hear that knock, to open the door, and to feel that strange spark again. I knew the feelings were inappropriate, or at least that's what I told myself, but my heart never listened. It simply reacted, quietly, insistently. Then one afternoon, everything shifted. I saw him riding through the neighborhood when suddenly his bike slipped, and he fell right in front of me. My heart raced as I ran to him, calling his name without even realizing how urgently it escaped my lips. Helping him up, insisting he come inside so I could tend to his wounds. It all happened so naturally, like instinct had taken over. As I cleaned the scrapes on his arm, there was something different in the air, something unspoken, yet undeniable. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, meaningful. He looked at me not just as another customer, but as someone who truly saw him. And in that moment, I realized I saw him too, not just a delivery boy, but a young man with depth, kindness, and a quiet strength that felt rare. When he mentioned how difficult it was to live far from work, something inside me made a decision before I could overthink it. I offered him the empty apartment next to my house. Even as the words left my mouth, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, like I was stepping into something unknown. It felt like fate, like the beginning of something I didn't yet understand. The next day, he moved in. I found myself watching him from my window, noticing his energy, his presence. The way he carried himself, it awakened something in me I thought I had lost forever. But it wasn't just attraction. It was the feeling of being present again, of noticing life, of caring. That evening, I invited him for dinner. What started as a simple meal turned into hours of conversation about loneliness, about life, about the things we don't say out loud. He spoke about his struggles, about trying to build something for himself, about feeling invisible in a world that moves too fast to notice people like him. And I spoke too about years that felt like they slipped away unnoticed, about giving so much of myself to others that I had forgotten what it felt like to live for me. He listened to me in a way no one had in years, and when he spoke, his words carried sincerity that touched something deep within me. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, truly seen, not as someone older, not as someone fading into the background, but as someone still alive, still meaningful. There was a tension between us, growing quietly, like a spark waiting to catch fire. It lingered in our conversations, in the way our eyes met a second longer than necessary, in the pauses that felt full rather than empty. And when that spark finally caught, it wasn't about age or expectations, it was about connection, about two lonely souls finding comfort in each other. Yet even in that closeness, I felt a storm of emotions, excitement mixed with hesitation, joy tangled with doubt. I would lie awake at night asking myself questions I couldn't answer. Was this right? Was I chasing something real, or just escaping the loneliness I had carried for so long? Was I holding on to a moment, Or was I finally stepping into something meaningful? But every time I saw him, every time we spoke, every time we laughed over something small and insignificant, those doubts softened, because what I felt wasn't forced. It wasn't something I had created out of desperation. It was something that grew naturally, quietly, like a seed finding its way through the cracks. Days turned into weeks, and our bond deepened in ways I hadn't expected. We began sharing more of our lives' morning coffee on the porch, casual conversations that stretched into meaningful discussions, moments of silence that felt comfortable rather than empty. There was a rhythm forming, something gentle yet powerful. And then one evening, as we sat together in a calm silence, he suggested something unexpected, a trip to a quiet beach town. Just the two of us. At first, I laughed softly, unsure if he was serious, but when I looked at him, I saw something steady in his eyes. It wasn't just a spontaneous idea. It was an invitation to step away from everything familiar, to explore something new, to see what this connection truly meant. It wasn't just about the trip. It felt like a promise of something new, something uncertain, yet undeniably meaningful. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I knew that saying yes meant accepting that my life was changing, that I was no longer the same person who stood by the window every morning feeling empty, that I was stepping into something unknown. But then I realized something important. For so long, I had been afraid of change, afraid of judgment, afraid of what others might think. And in that fear, I had forgotten to live. So I smiled, looked into his eyes, and said yes. Because sometimes, life surprises you in ways you never planned. Sometimes, it brings people into your life who don't fit into the rules you've always followed. And sometimes, those unexpected connections remind you that it's never too late to rediscover yourself. That trip didn't just change our relationship, it changed me. It reminded me that age doesn't define your ability to feel, to connect, to start again. It taught me that loneliness isn't something you have to accept, it's something you can grow beyond. And most importantly, it showed me that life doesn't end when you think it does. Sometimes, it's just waiting for the right moment to begin again. And that day, that ordinary day that turned extraordinary, was only the beginning.